Welcome everyone today for another tech meeting organized by Riwers. And today Nikoleta will present us topic. It will be about refactoring, like the Tailwind creators, right? So it's by the book that they actually made, and Nikoleta read it and also chose the best tips for us. So I'm really excited. Thank you, Nikoleta. And let's start. And everyone who has questions, please, right now, scan this QR code. If you can on your phones, you can do it right now as we are speaking. And please add your questions as we go, so in the end we can answer all of them. So we will have it at least a few more seconds on the screen until everyone has it.
I also have it in the contents slide, so this is not the last time you will see it, so it's okay.
Welcome. Okay, you have it also in the slides?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And thank you, and you can start.
Okay, now start. Okay, I just want to check, Adam, is everything okay online? Is the sound
Yes,
going
it should
through?
be. Everyone, you can hear as well, right? Perfect, perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, guys, just so you know, this time online is muted because we are also making a recording on the camera separately, so we would have echoes. So if you want something or whatever, please write it in the chat. All right? Okay, thank you. Then let's start. I think that we can hear you.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, Adam. So I would like to welcome you everyone for this tech meeting. The topic, as you see on the screen, is Refactoring UI. My name is Nikoleta. Maybe that's new for some of the people, not in this room probably, but for the online guys. So I would like to welcome you, and I would like to also thank you for coming. So I'm a front-end developer here at Riwers. There's actually my 3-year anniversary coming this April, so I'm here for quite a long time, let's say. And the reason why I chose this topic is because I was recently a part of a team where I was tasked with refactoring a UI design. It was an existing design, and I must admit I had absolutely zero clue what should I do, how to do it. I had no idea. And of course, naturally, I was asking around in the office. I was saying, okay, I have this side project and I'm supposed to do a redesign. So what can I do? And I got this very nice tip about this book, which we are going to be talking a lot about today. And the name is Refactoring UI. I really actually recommend this book. So I borrowed it, and of course, I put some of the most important tips, I would say, in this presentation, but I would also recommend you to read it through, because there is not a lot of, maybe I missed something, of course. And the contents of this presentation, actually you can still see the Slido QR code, and this is the password, as you can see on the screen. And the contents of this presentation will be mostly the refactoring tips, as I mentioned earlier, on how to start with this redesigning, how to choose a personality for your website, how to choose colors maybe. We will be talking also about hierarchy and spacing, the text, which is also very important, and the buttons. And I will show you some of the design horror stories which I found on Reddit threads. I didn't include any Slovak pages, just because I was afraid maybe there's an author that was doing it. Maybe he will be present, so he could be angry that I listed it. And then we will have the QA. So please, if you have any questions, just use the Slido code. It's anonymous if you choose so. Okay. Sorry. So let's say you are given a task and you are supposed to redesign something. Maybe how would you start if someone is comfortable to answer this? No one. Well, that's good because I didn't know either. You will call me? Okay, call me please next time you are supposed to do this. So yeah, that's actually, okay, no one here in the room had answers, so maybe if there is someone in the Meet and there are messages. Should I check that? Okay, no one. And that's okay, because I didn't know either. So I was lucky enough that I got this recommendation for this book. And yeah, the mistakes that we tend to do is actually, at least I have gotten into a choice overload, because there were these multiple parts of the application on this side project, which I was like, okay, this is maybe not great, this is not great. And it was like, okay, where do I even start? And we always spend a lot of time on these low-level decisions on where should the navigation go, or where we place the logo, or we spend too much on choosing a color. We search through all of these different palettes, and we just don't know what to choose, and we just basically in this choice overload, and then that leads to choice paralysis. We don't know what to choose and how to even continue, and we might be very discouraged on how to continue. What we need to remember is that applications are collections of features. So we still need to remember, okay, all of these design choices are important, but we still need to be very, what is very important is still the features of the application. So we could actually still focus on the features we want to have on the page. Okay, so we have already some design, which we are trying to redesign, but this is also for when we need to design a page from scratch. So always focus on the features first, probably. And let's say I wanted to give you an example. Right now, I'm interested in analog photography. And let's say I want to create a page for this. And I want to have a list of courses because I'm interested in this and I want to sell my customers, let's say, these courses for analog photography. So I will probably need to know what my course should look like, right? I should probably need to know what the functionality should be. So my requirement is that I want to list the analog courses. So I will need to know the title of the course. I will also need to know the lecture or the description, probably the real-time capacity, and maybe some ratings of the people who have already been there, and some call to action button, which would say something like book now or something similar. So what I did here is actually I chose like the smallest part of the application I want to focus on. And maybe this is also in the redesigning phase where you already have an existing design, or the smallest part of what you want to design, like from scratch. You can start with this, it's completely okay. The tips for this is actually to don't get hung up on these low-level decisions, because you can decide all of these later. So you can decide all of the shadows, the border radiuses, completely not important. And what is a great tip is actually to write it on the paper. So you just use a Sharpie, you just take the paper and you just write it down. You just do it this way. You don't have to actually code anything. You don't actually have to use Figma right now. From the beginning, you just think about the functionality and you write it. You just use this and then you use this. And this is something you might end up with. It doesn't make very sense to you, it doesn't make sense to me, but it might make sense to you because you're the author, right? And what is also, what I mentioned previously, is that you don't have to actually focus on the border radiuses or anything like this. You can actually focus just on the layout that you want to see, as we have seen here. This is just like a basic layout we see on this. Yeah. And what helps is to actually not focus on this. Don't use any color. You can design in grayscale because you can decide on the color later. And there you will then be placed in a position where you just have to use spacing. You have to use the contrast and you have to use size because you don't have color. And again, you don't have to do all of it in one day, okay? You have to do it like iteratively, as we are used to in Agile, right? And then you can just start with a simple version, and then you can build on that. So you will start with the functionality. As we said with the analog course, we will just start with the smallest step. And this is like an example of the grayscale design. But it could be even lower level. You don't have to even have labels or anything like this. What is also important to remember is when you are designing something, or even when you get to coding, it's very important for your users, if you have your application already on production, and this is the case exactly, where we are redesigning an existing app, just don't show any functionality which is not ready. So this could be like a button that does absolutely nothing. Sorry?
How do I do that?
So just don't do it. Just don't have the button there if it does nothing. Don't have the button there if it redirects you somewhere and the page is empty or it shows a 404. Just don't do it. You can hide it and you can edit later. You have it, maybe you have a system like this in Jira or something. You can just keep the story in backlog, just don't do it right now. Because it's a bad practice for the user. He will just go to the page and he will see, oh, but this does nothing. And he can be like discouraged to use the app. Sometimes happens to me. Okay, what is also important when you're starting up with redesigning or designing from scratch is to choose a personality for your website. This means actually, I will be using words like more serious look and also more playful look. So this application, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but this side project was actually related to surfing, okay, and to surf trips. I don't want to go into more detail about this, but this will be important because I will explain some stuff later on. And the choice for the fonts is actually yes, again, we have two categories. If you have the elegant and classic font, this is for more serious looking websites, okay? And this uses serifs, as we can see on the page. And the more playful look, the authors of the book said, is the sans serif. And also, colors can be categorized into these. And we have psychology of color. And psychology of color is a very broad topic. And also you have categories of colors, which can be more playful or more elegant looking. I would say for me, the playful would be like pink or something. And you might not want to use this for a banking website. At least, I'm not sure if we have at least somewhere. Maybe there is some pink banking website. But you can choose this color based on what you are selling. Okay, so let's say you are selling plant-based products, you probably want to use green tones. If you, or for me, example, if I want to design an analog website, I could go to ChatGPT and ask him, okay, what could be the color for my website? And he advised actually brownish and orange colors because it seems like a sepia, the effect on the pictures. So you can use something like this. Or I think I was once part of a hackathon and we were like measuring carbon footprint. So we again went with green because that, that evokes this, that we care for the environment because we use green. And this is some examples of what these colors could be looking like for you. Okay, so as you can see, yellow is joy, attention, and so on. Another important topic with color is how to use it on backgrounds. And that means you have to have a good contrast ratio. As you can see, when we go to this gray part, this is low contrast, which means it's a little bit not readable. And as we can see also on this button, on the left, when we use white color text, it's bad on the yellow button, and much more visible is this button with the black text. What you can do here, I actually listed this website. or you can just do it in the Google. You just put contrast ratio test, and you will put your background color and your font color, and there you will have these values. When it's, well, the number is maybe not so important. You just look, if it's green, it's perfect. If it's red, don't do it. Just switch up the color. Also, what is very important is to use the correct border radius. Again, I will be using playful and more official look. If you use smaller border radius, as we can see, this is the banking website. I mentioned some of these. This is Tatra Banka. So this is the Slovak banking website. You can see that it doesn't have such a big border radius. It has some, but the smaller border radius means more official and less playful.
Are those 6 fingers on that woman? Or it looks like that from far away.
Which picture? There is
the last
there.
one.
Last one, this one?
Yes, from far away it looks like she has something wrong with fingers.
No, I don't think she's AI. I think she's real.
What
No, it's like five fingers. I would say 5 fingers. But thank you. Okay, and now we have this playful look. You just apply bigger border radius. And as you can see, this is Dribble. This is also a designing website where you can find ideas for your next designing tasks. And as you can see, they are using it. Okay, so this is the full border radius. Also, this search area, let's call it that, has the same border radius as the buttons. Okay, so what is also important is to use it consistently. So don't just use like here you will use full border radius and or here, I don't know how many pixels is that, and then on the left button you will use like the smallest one or any, and then you will have a square button, and then next to it there will be round button. Don't do it. What is also important is to choose your language, and this also goes with the personality, because you can again have playful texts, or you can have more official text. I will not read all of these. You can just scan through these very fast. These are, of course, generated by ChatGPT. I told him he should use like very official texts. And then I did the same, and I asked him, okay, these are related to analog photography again. And yeah, make it sound official. Yeah, master the timeless craft of film photography, enroll in our comprehensive analog course. Then I did the same with the more playful prompt, and he did this. Okay, so do you love the look of film? Let's make it happen and sign up for our analog course. This was also important when I was helping out with the redesign of the surfing app, because I forgot to mention, actually, we were choosing more playful colors because it's a surfing website, which is a hobby for a lot of people. So we were choosing something that mimics the ocean. So we were going with a blue or yellow colors, or maybe even a little bit orange tint. And also we were changing the language because we wanted to go with the younger population, which I'm not meaning to say don't surf if you're older than whatever age. But, but sorry. So please, guys, surf at any age, okay? But yeah, the language was also an important part of this because we switched up some of these so that we are talking to, let's say, Gen Zs, which is hard even for me sometimes. Yeah, I wanted to come up with a word in Gen Z, but I don't know any. I don't know. Okay. I also mentioned a term which is choice overload, which can lead to choice paralysis if you are presented with a lot of choices. So you should limit your choices because you will have a lot of choosing to do when you are redesigning, because it's like a lot of fonts. Like Google Fonts has like the whole website. I don't know how many could be there. And you have also these different websites which generate color palettes and that's just crazy. And again, don't focus maybe on these small level decisions. Should this be 14 pixels or it should be 16 pixels? Just do something and then choose what feels right. And it's always better to choose just like a smaller set of these choices, and then you compare them, you know, side by side like they did here. And then you just, again, choose something that feels right. And when you see it like this on one page, you can choose much better than if you would have like 70 different options of this button. And what is important here is also to systematize everything, which means it's easier probably for front-end developers because we are using usually maybe even some libraries, so you don't have to do this like completely from scratch. If you use, I don't know, Material UI or Mentine, you already have these systems. What it means, or how I would translate this into front-end language, is to be actually having these reusable components, and this can actually help you avoid what I mentioned with these buttons. So you will just have one component, let's say for a primary colored button, then you have a secondary colored button, and you will just reuse these and probably just change texts. And this is, again, one type of a system, but you can have more systems for font size, font weight, line height, color, margins, paddings, border radiuses, which also I mentioned. You shouldn't have buttons which have none and 24 pixels. And yeah, what is also important in design is the visual hierarchy. And with this slide, I will probably make some guys happy because size is not everything. Because you can use actually color to make the hierarchy on the website, or you can use font weight. And what can happen is what I listed here, because if you solely focus on the size, it can cause the primary content to be too large and secondary too small. What does it mean? You can see here. I don't know the exact sizes, but this is quite big and black, yes. And this is small. So let's say the difference could be like 10 to 12 pixels, whether here you can differentiate the primary and secondary content with color, and you don't have to do it as much with size. And also you can do it with font weight, because, yeah, I think these have the same font weight, but I could be wrong. I don't remember when I was coding this. And there is a slight difference in size. This is like 2 pixels. So the heading, which is Norway Fjord Adventures, it's like, I think, 16 pixels, and this one is 14. And what also helps you here, maybe, again, you don't have to do it when you're a front-end developer and you don't have a designer on the team. You just use the libraries which I mentioned. And these usually have these design stuff nailed. You don't have to maybe even do anything, and you don't have to. Yeah, you can. You can change it to this. This is like the default, let's say, Mentine, and you can do this. And when it comes to font sizes, just do the darker color, as we've seen here, and a gray one, like grayish tones, like maybe a lighter shade of the primary on the secondary content, which could be dates or something like that, and even lighter for a tertiary content, and this could be copyright notice. Again, with the font size, font weight, sorry. Here we were using 400 and 400 for the heading and for the description. You don't have to do it, just use 400 to 500, and the bolder text can be 600 to 700. Here we have, again, something with the color related, but also text. This is gray text on a colored background, and that's not great. When I put it to test, it was not great, not terrible, but don't do this. You can actually make the color closer to the background color. In the book, they were describing they were not using RGB models. They were actually using HSL. So you will have the same hue for the text and for the background. You will just adjust the lightness and the hue. And we can see the result here. Maybe you just don't see the difference so much. Maybe it's not so visible, but it's there. At least I can see it. So sorry if you can't. Trust me on this. And this passed the test. I promise. I didn't list it as a,
But here I can see it.
Ah, okay.
This kind of
Okay, it might be, but this is like yeah, okay. We will now talk about emphasizing by de-emphasizing. In here you can see that this is not, like highlighted enough maybe, and you don't have to try to highlight this even more. You can actually de-emphasize the other content of this, and by that you actually do what you wanted to do in the first place. So you highlight it in the end. So you just decrease, you make this grayish look. What is also important, this is related to text, is, okay, this is me, but I don't live here, I swear. But yeah, labels should be a last resort for you. You don't actually need them because sometimes the text is self-explanatory. So you probably know front-end developer is not where I live, at least I hope you will know. And you probably know that that's the name of the position that I work as. And you also can see that the address looks like this in every country almost. So you can correctly presume that it's an address and you don't need to explain it by giving it a label. So you can just do this. And what else you can do is also add a nice visual icon, and it looks nice. And yeah, so in the end you can just omit it, or you can play around with some icons that will do the work for you, and you don't have to use labels. But it doesn't mean in general. You can still use labels in some cases. Here, you can replace it in stock 12 by 12 left in stock, like a natural sentence, as you would say. Also, let's say you have Airbnb, you don't have to do bedroom 3, you can do 3 bedrooms. Okay, you don't have to use like this. And if you really do need a label, make it de-emphasized, as we said before. You can use a grayish color for that. And what is important here is the 82 beats per minute. That's the most important number that you can see on this page. That's the important data that you want to see. And you can, if you really need to use the labels, you can do the font weight there, okay? So this is useful when you need to scan the text actually very fastly, okay? So here it might be important that you want to know just by looking at the page, the height and the weight, okay? And you can scan the page really quickly and you just see, okay, I wanted to know height of this person. I got it because it was emphasized with using bigger font weight. So you can highlight the keyword. And what is also here, I used this one design before when I wanted to emphasize something, but I actually did not use it in the right way because it looks much better when you do the icons with the lighter gray color. Or you can tell me, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, it's different for sure.
And this contrast also compensates for weight, because sometimes your icons can be like really, I don't want to say fat, but it does look fatter than the font. And when you de-emphasize them by giving them a different color, they could be looking a bit thinner. Oh, Jesus, I sound sexist, right, or something. Sorry, I apologize.
Don't worry, it's not recorded.
It's not. Now I'm on the YouTube and. Okay. Another important thing that we should talk about is actions on the web page. Here we are using very interesting colors. Yeah, it's very colorful, and we can actually change it. So again, here we were talking about primary and secondary content. This is also about buttons. So for buttons, we can actually also have a system. We can have primary, secondary, and tertiary buttons. This is from the book, but when I was checking Mentin library, you really have it there, like just by using it. So this can be the filled variant, this is the light variant, and the subtle variant. And yeah, it just looks better. Then we have a topic about layout and spacing. What is important here is to actually start with a lot of white space because you can still delete it. And it's much easier to delete it than to, just gradually add it. And you can see it, let's say, here. So we have started. You can start, if you want to choose a white space, you can start with the left picture. There's a lot of it. If you still don't like it, you can gradually decrease it and stop where it feels right. Also, what is important is to keep your content. It doesn't have to be stretched if the main content is supposed to be centered. So you can use some type of containers for this so that it's in the center of the web page, because otherwise it looks bad. When it comes to text, it also should not be stretched completely, as you can see on the 100 characters example. You can wrap it in a max width, and they recommend using 45 to 75 characters per line. And then it's just a decision whether you want it centered, or you want it on the left, or you want it on the right. And this also goes for the wider content, because you feel like, okay, this should be the same width as the content under it, but they actually recommend putting the max width on it. And again, you see it changed the content from 2 lines to 3, but it just is better. This is also connected. This is aligning the numbers in tables. And this is maybe a little bit connected to what we spoke about, this quick scanning. This is better to right-align them if you have decimal numbers and you have a lot of numbers after the dot. What is it? How do you call this dot? Decimal place. Yeah, thank you. Okay, can be. Thank you. So it's better to align it to the right. And when it comes to links, what I also again noticed when I was doing these examples with Mentin library was that Mentin by default doesn't actually decorate the links anymore. And they also say this in the books. Okay, so maybe you remember in the past, Google still works like this, right? It has these blue underlined decorated links, and you don't have to actually do it. You can just decorate it in a different way. You can just use hover effects, so when you put your cursor above this, you can see that it's clickable, and then you are redirected to the page. You don't have to actually use this color decoration usually it's this blue one. You can just have it like this hover, yeah. Oh. And we have spoken about colors a little bit. We will talk about colors a little bit more because I think I mentioned that when you are starting up with the page, you are probably choosing colors maybe at the beginning, which is not ideal, but you can do it. And maybe you've done this. This is coolers.co. You have multiple of these pages. You have different pages for choosing a color palette. As you can see, it's colorful. What you can end up with is your page looking a little bit. Okay, this. It looks great. Yeah, okay. Maybe Riwers should do a website like this, but yeah, it's colorful, right? And you actually don't.
Go back to this.
It catches your eye.
Oh.
It's not that boring, right?
It definitely is not boring. Okay, you can talk about this with Marco. He will be pleased, I'm sure. So you can end up with a very colorful background if you use these color palettes. They maybe shouldn't be used in this way, but I have been using them in this way. And I thought, yeah, right, this button should be this color and this button should be this color. But you actually just are supposed to choose maybe two colors, like one for primary content and then like an accent color into this primary color. And then you should use some gray palette where you have different shades for different purposes. Then you maybe should have warning color, danger color, and maybe I forgot the success color. And again, we have UI library, which can do it for you. You will just choose the primary palette and then the complementary color, let's call it that way, the secondary one. And you have these in place as a theme, and you maybe even don't have to design it by yourself. But what you want to have from each color is maybe to even have like 6 to 8 shades. And you begin with this one, this is like the darkest, and they go to the lightest color. And you can use these variants of the same color for hover effects. The darker shades should be used for text on the lighter background, and the lighter shades can be used for tinted alert background. So you can use it in this way. Also, when we are still in colors, you shouldn't maybe use white background. So I mean white like FFFFFF, because it can strain your eyes, especially, you probably know it, in the evening you probably use dark, I don't know how you call it, but you have your, dark theme on your mobile phone, or whether it's, dark mode, thank you. Dark mode, you don't use light mode in the evening. And this is exactly because of this, that this white can really strain your eyes. What you can do is use an off-white, which is a little bit, let's call it darker. And you can also use gray backgrounds. And you can also take your primary color of your website. Let's say I chose this yellow shade for my analog photography website. What I would want to do is to then again leave the hue and just adjust the lightness of this color. So it will be like a very, 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 very light yellow for my background. And then I can build my page on top of this. Another topic is how to choose your images. And that's very important because you probably wouldn't like the website if the images were somehow pixelated or they would be low quality. And if you cannot if you don't have these images in good quality. Maybe you can hire a photographer who would take the pictures for you and just use them, or you would use stock photography. And what is also important is if you use these images as a background, you maybe want to put or place a text on top of them. And it's really important to also keep in mind this contrast ratio. You need to have very contrasting text so that it just doesn't look like this on the left side, because it just is white on white and you cannot maybe read it. And how you can avoid this is to maybe add this overlay with linear gradient, as you can see, and now it's more readable. Or you can actually use like a shadow on the text, and this will create depth and it can be more readable. But sometimes it might not be enough. You might still want to do something with the image by itself and just add like darker color to it. Or you can adjust contrast on the image by itself. And this is also important. So just so that your content doesn't grow like this, you should do it in a way that these, I will call them cards. You want them the same size. So yeah, these burgers. Is someone hungry here? Yeah. Okay. I'm getting to an end here, so don't worry. But you want to basically just cut them. You don't need them whole like this. You can just hide the overflow with these. So this will be a summary. This will be coming to an end, this presentation, but I will again show you the horror stories which I prepared. And I want to emphasize that you should be consistent in design, which means you shouldn't use this button and then another button which will look completely different. I can show this, I think, on one of these pages. These might be even details, okay? But you have this growing effect on this button. But when you go to exactly the same looking button, you don't have the growing effect.
It feels like it's disabled suddenly.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't behave the same way.
Yeah, it doesn't behave, yeah, exactly. And then we scroll here, and what you see is that this button doesn't look like this. It's very similar, but it's missing this border. Then we go here. Okay, this is tertiary content, what we saw, this button, but again, it has this hover effect, and now it looks like this, and it's just a little bit not consistent. Again, what I would probably use is to have this, the same border radius as these, okay? So just so that it's consistent, or maybe even these I would do in a different way, just so that it looks the same everywhere, but maybe that's just too detailed. So just be consistent. Another thing what I experienced is that I was using a lot of borders, and what I ended up with during this redesign was that some content had borders, then the below content didn't have, then another part was again with borders. And this, again, in a way, wasn't consistent. So I just told myself, okay, I will not use borders at all. I will just do natural content on a white background, off-white background, I'm sorry. And it actually helped to delete all the borders, because I realized, okay, this looks better. It doesn't even need a border. So you don't have to differentiate the components by adding them a border. You might not need it. And you can always add the border somewhere along the way later. And what you can replace these is to using spacing, so to differentiate the content. You can use the background colors or the shadows. And in forms, it's important to group-related fields together and with the spacing and not the borders. Okay, you can always, what we talked about, reduce the importance of elements with lower contrast and use the white space more effectively. Okay, we can always reduce it, but start with the big white space and don't start with color. And maybe even a little bit more should be in this summary, but I felt like these are the most important. And now we can move to Q&A. So you will have like a...
Okay. Can I join you for Q&A so I can read you the questions?
Aha, I don't know, what should I do?
I have them ready.
You have them ready?
Yeah.
Aha, okay. And what should I do? Because I have this like slide here.
I will be just reading them to you,
see.
so it's all good.
That's a lot of questions.
Okay, thank you,
do it.
Nikoleta, for great presentation. It was really nice, in depth, and I like those examples, especially these ones. Do you want to show? Do you want to showcase them again, or should we stay on this one?
We can stay on this one, and then when I answer a question, we can move to another one.
You know, but it kind of hurts, especially the first one, because that's how one of my first pages, which I commercially created, looked like for one of my customers. So, you know, I was actually making a website for a cake business. It was for Marlenka. So, and I had to like cut out every single cake manually in Photoshop. Right now, you would just throw it in some AI tool. So, yes. Okay, guys, can you also hear me well? Because I just turned on my mic and I want to be sure that everything is going correctly. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Victoria. I'm happy that you can hear me well. All right, so the first question is the choice overload is real, and I experienced it as well. You can get stuck and lost easily. So how do you stop yourself at one point? So maybe from your own experience.
Well, what I would say is that you actually sometimes just have to start and just do it.
You mean stop and start doing it?
You start doing it and then you know when to stop, I would say.
Okay.
Maybe let's go to another question and I will go back to this one if that's okay with you.
All right. So Oleg, thank you for the question, old friend. So what is harder, implementing the redesign or explaining it to the stakeholders? That's a very good question.
I would say the B is correct. Because sometimes you just have to really like fight for why you chose this. Maybe fight is not even a good word, but you have to explain this, or why I did this. I remember that once for a customer I was actually sending, there was this back button and it was placed somewhere on the bottom on the left. So I had to actually Google like what is the Apple standard for where should the back button go, and there is a standard, thank God, and thank God that the customer was like, okay, yeah, you may be right, but sometimes you just have to do all of these, you have to prove yourself why you made this decision, and that's sometimes hard to explain to the person.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, everyone, when they are designing their page, it's sometimes as their baby. They treat it like this. And you don't want to misstep. You don't want to go over their boundaries, and you don't want them to go over your boundaries, because sometimes you just need to do some stuff right because it's the standard. But yeah, finding the balance is the worst thing.
That's a very good answer. Thank you. So then, Stano is asking, thanks for covering UX UI. Did you consider any design patterns for smaller screens views and touch screens behavior during the redesign? Or in your probably example of the surfing website which you are working on.
Okay, so yeah, sometimes also they advise this to maybe if you just start mobile first, it might be easier for you. I actually didn't do this, but it wasn't. It was my mistake, of course. I just I've learned, of course, during this journey on this project. So yeah, I've made this mistake that I didn't do mobile first design. I just did it on the desktop mode, but it is better. But what was the question? I'm not sure if I answered this.
So again, the question was, did you consider any design patterns for smaller screen views and the touch screen behavior during the redesign?
I don't know what are design patterns for mobile screens. Yes. So I'm not sure if I can answer this. What are design patterns for smaller screens?
So maybe some kind of like best practices, like how it should behave, how the maybe components should fall under each other, and these aspects, I would guess.
Okay, I would say that I did not cover this enough in this presentation.
So we should not open your website on the phone.
No, don't do. But the general rule was to actually make it full width on the mobile screens. Maybe just a small padding from the sides, but I would say margins for me were the same, which might be a mistake. I realize that now. And of course, you decrease the sizes of the buttons just so that the content doesn't jump out as much on you. So again, with these libraries, it's much easier to do because you can just do if a smaller screen, just decrease the sizes of the buttons, just decrease the font sizes, and so on. So I would probably start there if I were to do mobile first, just to make it smaller so that it's nice for the eye, and just to increase it on the desktop. Yeah.
And this nicely actually ties to the next question. So it looks like we can mess up more by changing the default settings of the UI library than by leaving it as is. So should we motivate customers to stay with default?
This is actually an interesting question. Well, first thing is that it depends on what the customer wants. Again, he will probably lead by what he feels is right. He will just look at it and he will see, okay, I don't like this, and oh, okay, this is good. But I'm not sure, okay? This is a hard one. Again, it's finding the balance for me that you don't know the correct answer maybe for this. But sometimes it's worth fighting for the standard. But yeah, you don't want every page. Okay, so let's say we are using in Riwers Material UI or Menting or whatever. And we don't want to end up for every customer designing the same web page. Okay, nobody wants this. Always probably the customer will want to have a page that feels differently in a way. But you can still do it with the library, like Material UI. But I would probably go in this direction, that to code these reusable components, because it's much simpler than, okay, maybe it might be hard at the beginning to redesign them so that it doesn't look like Material UI anymore. But it might be less work because you can use these theming, these palettes, and you don't have to do these decisions like from scratch. So I would maybe go with the answer to take the library, maybe if the customer really wants to be different, to redesign the components, but to make them as much reusable as possible. So just then you will just code it once and then it's done for you. You don't have to do it anymore.
So no two versions of the same button.
No, not like this. That's not what I mean.
I never saw that in any project.
Me neither.
So next question is, how does creating design first in Figma fit into the correct way of designing, in your opinion? Should designers mostly use and adjust UI framework components?
Okay, so I must tell you that when I was preparing some examples, because I took some of the examples from the book, but some of them I was designing. For me, as a front-end developer, it was much easier to code them by using this kind of library, which was Mantin for me and Material UI, than it was designing it in Figma. And the reason for this is I have never worked in Figma before, I would say, at least I don't remember it, so it was really hard for me. And when you do this front-end stuff every day, because you're working as a front-end developer, it was definitely much easier for me. So again, for me, I would probably go with the UI library because it's much faster for me. But I do believe that designers, like real designers, which is not me, of course, they do it in Figma and they are very proficient. And maybe I don't even know the functionality of Figma. There could be, they can, of course, again, design maybe like reusable components and stuff like this. And maybe they just are much more efficient in Figma than I am. So this answer would be very personal for me, that I would probably go with the designing libraries, which is which
so they should like get the set of those components for the Figma and like adjust them, reuse them, and so for you as a front-end developer would be easier than to build upon that.
I don't think I understand.
Okay.
How do you meant it?
So I meant it that for Figma you can actually buy packs of components which mirror the let's say Matter UI.
Okay, I didn't know.
And then when the designer will create like specific version of the button, then you just know like in which way you need to adjust it. And then and still it then resembles the Matter UI, but they can give it more feel of their own, and then maybe it's easier to actually then still follow this kind of like rules of sizes and everything, because then they can mess up less than if they start from scratch. So
yeah, okay. I didn't know this about Figma, but
actually Tomasz is using it.
Tomasz is it's useful. Useful knowledge.
Yes. So do you think that designing in grayscale influences creativity or removes some important perspective?
I must admit I never designed in grayscale. I just jump right through it, and that's the mistake I recognized when I was done with the redesign. So I'm not sure if I'm competent enough to answer this, but what I feel like is that it really gives you this opportunity to use what we discussed before, okay, the spacing and so on. Maybe you would not even use as much borders because it would look completely different in the grayscale. It would just be like, too dark if you chose, bordering your content. And maybe then what could happen is that I could have come up to the decision of not using borders in UI much quicker than before, than I did now. So I think there might be some hidden creativity there.
Okay. Then we have a question from Oleg. How do you center a div? Oleg, that's impossible. Everyone knows that. Okay? Okay? Stop tricking her. Okay? I'm looking at you.
That is a very good question. So I would probably... I just know that it might take me 2 days to do this. I would probably ask a senior colleague because I don't know. Yeah. With ChatGPT, I would probably do this. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think is that the end? No.
We have a few more, but I want to just skip through the last for some of them.
But there was some that I think I skipped.
Yes. So you wanted to answer the first one, the choice overload. Like how do you deal with it when you get stuck on something, right? Like you are trying to explore these, and then you find another article, and then you are suddenly like spending a few hours on specific topic, and you know that you need to actually at one point stop and choose. So how do you stop yourself? Okay,
so I think now I realize that as you said it, but maybe we are guessing. It's sometimes hard to if the question is anonymous or if it's not. But we might be just guessing that this person spent a lot of time reading articles and so on. So at one point you have to stop and you have to start coding and you have to start designing. So, yeah, that's what I would do actually. And I did it. I did it head first. And that's why I realized some mistakes that I've made at the beginning after I did them. Okay?
Which you are not doing it anymore.
There are more mistakes waiting for me, of course, on this journey. But yeah, I would probably... Again, I felt like when this surfing topic is close to my heart, let's say. Also, if I would be doing this page with analog, that's also close to my heart, and I'm the boss of myself because I'm designing it myself. But I would probably ask ChatGPT for the color palettes and so on. I would, of course, start maybe grayscale just to get the feel of the page. Well, no, the first thing I would do is to start with this. So if I want to avoid choice overload, I maybe don't put myself in a position where I have to choose, and I will start from a different end. So maybe with the functionality. Okay, so if I'm designing these courses, I will think about, okay, what I want the person to see. What is the most important functionality on that page? And maybe I would start from a different angle, okay? So I will forget the choice overload. I will not put myself in a position that I want to make a choice. I will just start with the paper and pen, write something down, and then I think the process in itself is iterative. So you just fix what's broken and you build on what's working.
You just described the whole development, so yeah. Thank you. So we have one interesting one. Have you ever used different radius values on the same page? Confess.
It might be. It might be.
It's like somebody knows you here.
Yeah, it might be. That's why I know that it's bad, because I did it myself.
Okay, so another tip for enhancing focus is to hide blur control elements that are not relevant for the current context, such as pagination controls with backdrop filter. So
Yes.
this was probably a tip
nice.
for everyone.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And do you think that tools like Storybook contribute to better and more consistent design, and do you use them?
What is Storybook? Probably.
Okay, so no.
Storybook, what is it? Does somebody know?
Yeah, Storybook is a tool that you share your component with your colleagues. So for example, if you want to design an atomic component, you design it, you put it in Storybook. So whoever wants to use this component, go to this web page and see it and how to interact with this component, what it is actually doing before you use it. So I would say it's not worth just waste of the time.
But you actually can see some components
You
there?
can see the
Like
colors, you can interact with the component, you can see how it's interacting, you can set the primary, secondary colors. You can actually completely customize this component to use a Storybook. So when you are sharing your component with me, take a look. If it's okay, I can just play with it, I can change the color, I can interact with it. Yeah, this is the useful application for, I would say, for larger scale application.
Okay, for large.
So it's better for larger scale companies' applications.
Application, not just normal team with a few size that they're developing.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, then that's most of the questions. Thank you very much again, everyone, for joining, and thank you, Nikoleta, for such a great presentation. Yes, Victoria.
What would you advise to use actually for the website to stand out more? So like there are quite a few good designs, but they are just so simple. Maybe it's good to be simple in the design. Yeah, sure. But what would you advise for it to like not be just good, but the best?
The best.
Yeah.
Well, what do you like?
Well, it doesn't.
If it would be your website, what do you like? What color do you like?
You like when clients buy what we have?
Yes,
So, are you selling website? You selling website? You sell your.
We sell something.
You sell.
on our
Okay.
website.
Okay.
And
It's
we like money, so we want to get money, and so like somebody our
I love the sentence, I like money.
will buy from our website, but not from 10 others.
Okay, so there is actually, you can look at this website and you can tell it stands out. Sometimes doing,
Yes, I would buy here.
you would buy?
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe
I would say original.
maybe use this is a good example. But sometimes not everything maybe that stands out is the best, but if you are going for standing out, then probably I would do exactly something different than everybody does. So I would probably look at multiple websites that maybe I like, and I would find what they are doing. Maybe they are, I don't know, they are using some border radius and you can just do buttons in the shape of a heart, whatever, because you want to stand out if that's your goal. But we are, yeah, you know, or I would maybe even go to these lengths. I would go look at the existing material UI, Mantin, or whatever libraries. I'm just using all of these examples. And I would do it exactly opposite way that they are doing it, because I want to maybe stand out. But at the same time, these rules are made, or maybe these tips are useful to you because they are pleasant to look at. So you cannot maybe overdo it. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, be consistent in being different.
What do you think also of like really complex banners? Because I've been to a few websites that use like really complex banners. Like for example, you scroll or use your mouse and the picture just moves. Do you think it's too much?
I would say, yeah, just from the description, it would be probably too much for me.
I think it's just, it gives you an impression. You will definitely remember it.
But yeah, maybe if you want to stand out, maybe this is why they did it again. Maybe that's what you are looking for, but you don't know it yet. Okay, thank you.
Okay, one more question. Right now we are like living in European Union. We do also some projects for European Union, and here we have some directives about how our design should look like on the website for people with disabilities.
Okay.
And I'm like just curious if you know like some resources, some advices, like how should we do our design so we can get the proper license in European Union and doesn't have like any problems for our product or website.
Okay,
and
so
if you had such experience.
I must say I didn't have direct experience with this. What I would again do is to research these directives, what they expect the design to look like. And yeah, so for example, if you are, let's say, color blindness, you have probably some rules to apply in your design if you want to also accommodate these people. I can give you like specific examples, but again, I would research what I should do and try to apply it. But I cannot give you any specifics because they don't come to mind. So maybe I did not answer it well enough. But yeah, but probably if you are doing this, you need to know what they want you to do, this European Union, what are the rules?
Actually, there is a website named as NNG Group. It's a UX website. You should search for inclusive design. This is a topic in NNG Group. You should go to it and search for any inclusive design. Inside the inclusive design, you find everything about this disability.
What is it? So that we can share it.
NNG Group.
Like this? No.
Double N.
Double N.
N, and then what?
NN Group.
And group.
And search for inclusive design.
Nielsen Norman Group, okay.
And have you had experience in getting this license for the product?
No, I didn't get any license. What the topic that you are talking about is inclusive design.
Yeah.
Just this topic, and you should go through it. And for example, the banner you were talking about is actually a problem.
Nie,
Cognitive issue. So when someone has a cognitive impairment, when see the banners, he may be shocked and leave your website. So the colors, the cognitive load of the website can affect the persons which are visiting your website. So this is the article you should read about the inclusive design.
So if you want to read more about inclusive design, check the nngroup.com. They have some articles. It's a very good question and actually good point for discussion. So since you don't have mics and then we just record it, then we can discuss it over pizza. This is all which is right after we finish this presentation. So thank you very much everyone for coming, and thank you Nikoleta for very nice presentation. Thank you again everyone also joining online, and next time if you join us in the office here in Bratislava at Riwers offices, then you can get some pizza as well. So see you next time.